part of everything that came about with Moonball Media, obviously there's production side to everything. So Telly, we always talked about Anthony when we were in AA, always making these crazy videos. That's when Vine was a big thing, those 6-second in and out videos, that type of stuff. We always talked about, you know, having something like this on the back end when we were both done playing to continue to give back to the game, continue to find ways to tell stories about the game. So all we do is kind of just sit in these seats, and when a guest comes in, we know our little info about the guest. And after that, there's a lot of things that happen beforehand that we now have Michael Gallucci, Anthony Serratelli here to kind of explain everything. Gallucci, you're usually in the black shirts, buddy. We got the black shirt on.
I didn't get
Come
the memo
on.
today. The one day I don't wear black, you guys have me on.
Don't let them sell you guys short. There's a lot that these guys do too, obviously, to get these shows in front of people, good content, good conversations, and that's why you guys are in these seats. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you guys all see, but I don't think a lot of people get to see. And it's very interesting from my perspective. Obviously, this is my world, but it's very interesting because there's a million things that happen. And what we're gonna do is run through this and bring a lot of these guys in who don't get to be in front of the camera and are doing all the work, pushing all the buttons, and show people what it's like to actually push out a podcast of this magnitude. I do want to say, like, we do go pretty balls to the wall. So this is like, we do a lot of things. There are ways to do podcasts that are sit in front of a mic and put it on audio platforms, and it can be very simple. So it's not like you have to do it this way, but obviously this is the way we chose, we thought was very interesting, from the way it's produced to like getting people in person, which we find to be very, you know, much more. The setting is vulnerable, right? It's comfortable, and I'll let Mike speak on that, but there's so much we do to even think about how to line up a shoot, and we'll start there. So when we do that, it's host availability, it's crew availability, guest availability. We're looking for trying to create efficiencies around events, because that's where all the guests generally, we try to pool them all together so we can shoot a bunch of them and rip these things off. Even though you guys, everyone sees a different outfit on everybody, they might not know we shoot 2, 3, or 4 in one day. So we just rip them off as we can, but when there's not an event to work around, it's a little bit more hectic, like this one. Mike, I'll let you run into that. And how we're
before you get started,
together.
Gallucci, I want to do this. So what's cool about Moonball Media is we are a full functioning production company as well. So this partnership that we all have, I'm the one that just comes up with these crazy ideas, and on the production side, Gallucci and Telly are like, okay, whoa, this is not possible, this is possible. So turning it over to Gallucci, turning those ideas into a reality, kind of from a business standpoint, like what is step one and how do we go to build that up?
Well, first of all, the great thing is Anthony's been doing this for a while with Jersey Filmmaker. And just as a background of that, I've been working with Anthony for the last several years, starting on Fanatics projects when we started doing original content there. So that as the foundation to do all this is amazing, because when you watch these shows, the audio is amazing, the video is amazing. It's like you're producing a TV show. It's funny because we talk about, you know, should we use the word podcast for this?
Yeah, we debated podcast, show, what are we gonna call this, you know?
Yeah. So when you think about the hosts, you guys are in 3 different cities, 3 different states. So to start there, getting your availability, coming with up with those ideas and what we're going to talk about, it starts by us in probably a group chat text message that's being fired around all the time. So that's,
and not only that too, these guys all have other things going on. Sua does all his speaking and is at all these events. Moylan's on TV. Haas is doing the Beckcast with FanDuel, and is a new father, you know, over the last couple of years, has another one on the way. So there's a lot of things going on in your guys' lives that we have to work around to make this work for everybody. And obviously they've sacrificed a lot to be here as well. So there's a lot, again, that people might not see, that it's like, yeah, we're here, it looks like a lot of fun, but it's pretty hectic to get it together.
And from my perspective, and probably yours as well, this is the part that's the enjoyable part. And then we get to go away and kind of forget about it, Eric and I. And then the next thing I see is this unbelievable clip. And I'm like, oh my God, that's us. Like, that's when it felt real to me, was after Arizona, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, that looks unbelievable. That's not like something I've ever seen before, and that's us, and the content that's coming out is incredible. That's when I was like, okay, this is different, and these guys know exactly what they're doing.
I love that, because starting with the Arizona trip, to me, we started out in Florida, we did the first 6 there, Arizona was the first time that we really got to prep and be fully prepared and know what we're going into.
We did have no idea, honestly. I had no idea.
And we
definitely
took some risk by hoping the guys took time out of their schedule to come and be on the podcast, share stories. We wanted to make the atmosphere comfortable for them. We wanted them to feel like they were just coming to the house to hang out. We sit and have a conversation and go from there. So Arizona, we were out there for spring training. We were there for 4 days. We're trying to get as many episodes done. Do we call them episodes or we call them conversations?
Shows, episodes,
whatever you want to call
I like
them.
combos.
Right. So we plan on wanting to do about 3 to 4 a day, so we can leave Arizona with 10 to 14, 10 to 15 episodes, and we ended up accomplishing our goal. So from Arizona, you go back to step one, having to find a place to shoot, having to find the flights, all that type of stuff. I mean, where do you start?
What's interesting to start is booking the guests. So coming from a corporate world, you're usually working with a manager or an agent, and there's a couple layers in between. Maybe a few days before going out to Arizona, we have a DM conversation, Haas, Tatis, and Profar, and these guys are talking like buddies. And to be able to see the responses there when Haas says, "Will you come on my show?" and it's like an immediate like, "Whatever you need, Papa." It's so great because the trust is already there with Haas being longtime MLB vet and being so close to these guys and a great clubhouse guy, that it's such a nice feeling to be able to reach out directly to the guests and then have them come on. And we had a star-studded lineup in Arizona, the whole National League All-Star outfield.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that is an advantage we have, like with our network and connections, what we've been through. So it's not something we take for granted, because a lot of people wouldn't be able to just hit up Profar and Tatis and get them on the show. So that's something obviously, but we've worked for as a group, and we've been able to bring that together. So we don't sell ourselves short on that, and we understand that there's an advantage there. But there's, again, once we get that set up, it's like, how do we create a great conversation? And that's again where Mike comes in and is able to communicate with these guys because of the trust and figure out how to set up a show and talking points. So why don't you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with hopefully having a conversation with the guests beforehand. Did that with a few people. Had a great conversation with Coach Lombard, who Sua set up, bench coach for the Detroit Tigers. And he had a story that was almost not even related to baseball at the time. He talked about his mom being in the civil rights movement and losing his mom when he was young in a car accident. And getting that initial story and then giving the talking points to you guys, and then the environment that we set up for a guy like George to come on, maybe not even meeting some of the guys that were on, or actually that he knew Sue and he knew Haas, but to sit down and to be vulnerable with a crew around here. I think the whole team does a really good job of creating that environment. It's an intimate environment. We're usually in a home of a living room, or in a beautiful place right now in a living room. The crew just does a great job of making everybody feel at home, and then those stories can come out, and it's really beautiful in a sense. The stories that these guys and girls tell make an impact, because in the beginning, I'm on social media handles as well. So I see the incoming messages from the parents, the coaches, the other players, who straight up say to us, "Your episode, your talk affected me in a positive way. I was having an issue with my son or daughter, and I used that." So creating that environment where people are being able to be vulnerable and tell us stories, and you guys being curious to ask more questions about that, is just an incredible thing about a podcast or a show that we do here.
What I like about your talking points is we have conversations right before the guest comes on, and we might not know the guest personally, but you've watched their videos, you've read articles, you give us information that kind of leads to like planned spontaneity. So we don't know everything, but we know like what questions we want to ask. And also what you said is, you always design these talking points and telling you as well as like always keeping the audience in mind. Okay, what do they want to hear? What could they use in their lives as players or coaches or parents? And that's something that's always super, super helpful.
Yeah, Yonder said that on one of the Arizona episodes. When he's broadcasting a game, when he's calling a game, he wants to teach the young 12, 13-year-old player what's happening during the game. And at the same time, that 40, 50-year-old guy that's having a beer, enjoying the game, he wants to cater to him as well. So that fine mix and that fine balance. And I think that's something we've learned along the way is our original idea was to be a podcast coming from a baseball perspective. And then after going to Arizona, understanding, man, we've reached a big audience, especially on the youth side with some of these stories that we've shared. So then we've adjusted on the fly and understood, okay, let's hone in on this area a little more. So with all that being said, you have to have that ability to kind of adjust on the fly as you're learning throughout the process as well.
I think the audience is going to dictate what this ends up being in the long run, because we're not doing this for ourselves. I mean, I'm enjoying myself, obviously, but we need to get these conversations out there and have people understand that it's not just regular people that deal with regular nonsense. Everybody that we speak to is dealing with something in their life. They've been through something. We are all human beings, and that's the message that needs to get across. We are not elitists. Baseball players are no different than anybody else. All athletes, all people are connected in some way. And I think the more we do this and the better conversations we have, it's actual real conversations. You said at the start that I have another job. I do have another job, and I really enjoy that job. But it's so repetitive because I'm doing the same thing about the same team all the time. This allows us to have real, genuine conversations about everything that there is. And I think that's why our audience is just going to expand as we have these conversations too.
You talked about being repetitive and not doing the same thing over and over again. And I've said multiple times, one thing I really appreciate about you is you listen to the player. You don't come to the player with X, Y, Z and you need to accomplish that. So having a conversation with a player now versus having this kind of conversation in this setting with someone you don't know or don't have any previous relationship with, how do you prepare in interviewing, so to say, or having a conversation with the player? And is it one thing where like, all right, I'm prepared just in case I don't get that initial feedback and I can go off that? Or do you just kind of wait and see what they say and go off of that? And that's kind of
Is there a playbook?
What makes this unique is just the collective group. So there's different than when you're talking to one person one-on-one, where you just kind of have to dance together and have that curiosity. But what's really cool, and I don't want to speak for you guys, like all of us, is because of our different perspectives, our questions will come from different places. And a lot of times, same thing. I'm just sitting here listening and thinking, wow, that's a really good question that Muccilo just gave, and that I had never even taken into consideration. And so, yeah, it's just kind of like that dance. But because of all the preparation that led into it, there's no. You're like, it's not like double Dutch where you're like waiting to jump in. You just are present. You're here because of the amazing, the set is just vulnerable, transparent, and just allows everyone to be safe, including us.
And it really is a hard balance for us because we want to share some of these stories and we want to really talk about other people, other players that we've shared stories with or clubhouses with, but at the same time, you don't want to air out some of the stuff. You know, we don't know if they want us talking about a time where they were vulnerable or mentally they weren't all there. But I think what's so cool about this is as we continue to explain our situations and we show our vulnerableness or our vulnerability.
Beautiful, well done.
Why Willie correct him?
Season 1, I did not correct that. Season 3, 4, I'm on top of it. But to be able to have that and show people, hey, yeah, we're vulnerable as well. We're sharing our story of when times didn't go as well. What's so cool about it now is now we have players reaching out to us. Hey man, I got to get on there. I want to share my story and hopefully that can help some people. So it's cool to see what this has all grown into. It really has. And I think it's going to just continue to grow more and more.
And that comfort level we keep talking about, like what we create on set that Mike mentioned, and I think every one of you mentioned at this point, I want to hear like from you guys, being in front of the cameras. Obviously we've kind of all been here before, but it's different when you start to have a conversation with people. I think what's cool is when people walk in here, it can look grand, it could look like there's a lot going on, but once they sit in these seats, it kind of just disappears. Like I don't feel like there's cameras on me once I actually sit here. When I first sit down, I'm like, okay, I've got to be camera ready. But then like once this conversation goes, it really feels like they're not here, which I think is really interesting.
You lock into the conversation with the person and you're looking at them. You're not looking at a lens, you're looking at somebody's
And it's
eyes.
so important, I think, and something to think about if you're doing a podcast is like, yeah, you don't necessarily want to be looking into the camera like maybe you do on a Wednesday night for the post game, but you're talking straight to that audience. This is a conversation here, and we just happen to broadcast that out afterwards, which is really neat. So let's, we got to keep moving through because we got a lot of people to get here. But Mike, let me give a little more background because I should do this before everyone gets in. But Mike Gallucci is our showrunner for Diggin Deep. He kind of stepped in to do that to get us off the ground. But Mike's also our chief of staff at Moonball, oversees all of our strategy and operations. So he sees everything that's going on alongside me and Haas, and there's just a lot to overlook, obviously, as we build this whole business. But Mike has really put this together, and you'll see as we bring some other people in later, we're trying to shift roles and be a little bit more concentrated on what we have to focus on so that we can grow and scale. But Mike has done a lot of work, so we really appreciate that, Mike, and give him a little round of applause, of course. But let's switch you out with Mariusz. We'll get Mariusz in here to talk about some of the gear and how we prep for a shoot.
Mariusz!
Yes.
There he is.
I like the transition.
There he is.
Mariusz Brozek. So, you know, you might hear a lot of Italian names around here as we go through this group.
No.
But, so we got nicknames for everyone too, just in case they don't fit the mold. So this is Mario Brozekio. I mean, we've had a couple of them, but Mariusz joined us, well, about a year ago or so now probably, but he's been great. So Mariusz, I like to compare to me, and I don't want to downgrade anyone else because there's a lot of utility players here. A lot of guys do a lot of things behind the scenes, but Mariusz I would consider our super utility. So kind of like I was on the field, Mariusz is for us. I mean, from setup, you know, camera work to editing to prepping, anything we need, this guy is there, can figure it out, and we can rely on him. So he does a lot of things for us, but what we're going to talk about with him is kind of how we prep and the amount of shit that we have on set to make it happen.
I've seen it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here.
I've opened a couple closets around here.
We're actually pretty, I would say we're pretty good at keeping it minimal, if you can believe it. Like, because we've gone from cameras we used to use that were, you know, these bigger cinema cameras to now as time and technology shifts, we're able to bring smaller items along with us, from the cameras to tripods. But Mariusz, what do we have going on here? How many cameras, how many lenses, lighting, what do we got?
Oh my gosh, we have actually, it's exciting to be on this side for the first time because I'm always looking at it from the outside. But to actually prep and create that atmosphere, there's a lot of gear behind that. So our basic setup is around like 5 cameras. We go up to 7 depending on the amount of guests. We chose very compact setups because we travel. We already shot in 4 different states. Which means we're traveling around on the planes. We want very small cameras we can carry around. We use mostly prime lenses to have shallow depth of field, to have a cinematic look, so the guys, they can look like in a movie.
Which is, it's a very good point and something to point out, because like one of the things that make, yeah, let's get a little behind the technicalities of that. So, you know, when on your camera in portrait mode,
yes,
you know how it creates that shallowness, the blurriness behind it. So we choose lenses that give us a lot of depth, or shallow depth, so that behind us looks more blurry. It looks a little more cinematic, like you said. So that visual that you saw when you're like, holy shit, this like looks amazing, and that's a big part of the reason people might not think about too much if they just go grab a camera and throw it up there. That you might see everything that's going on in the room very clearly, and you might want that. If you're close to a background and it's very interesting, maybe you don't want that big depth. You want to see, like in your home setup, you know, there's a lot of cool stuff in the background, so maybe you want to see that. But in this situation, we have hopefully bigger rooms with a lot of depth, and it looks really cool to make that shallow, and it looks very cinematic and really like high quality. So I don't want to say we're cheating, but that's the way to get there.
Yeah, there's portrait mode at all times on each person. So we basically have 1 camera for each person talking at all times. Plus we have cameras floating around to pick up some B-roll and the guests coming in, slow motion, so we can have some intros and shots for trailers and social media. We obviously pack a little lighter for when we travel for shoot. When we home, like right now, we can throw more sandbags. We can have a little more heavy gear, which is basically our bread and butter.
There's simple things like you might not think about, like when we travel with sandbags, they're heavy, obviously. We want to make sure these lights don't fall on us while we're sitting here. When we're home, we could throw as many as we want in the van and get it over here. On the road, it's kind of hard to pack them into suitcases. We actually had Dan one time, I think, had to put one in his carry-on because we were over 100 pounds in a suitcase, and they were like, nope, no go. So he had to put one in his backpack to carry on the plane. But we've learned as we get better, there are water bags. So you bring them empty, you fill them up.
I was just going to say, look, call me genius, because I am. I was just going to say that you could just bring the bags and go to Home Depot, grab the sand.
You could, but that's a huge pain in the ass to do there. So there
Sure
are
is.
other ways. But great idea.
Now
Same
water.
concept. Now we use
Same
water.
concept. Yeah.
Same idea. But yeah, there's a lot.
That's how I bring
and-
my weights when I'm on the road. It's just water.
So you maintain.
Good.
Maintain.
This reminds me of like you know how like when when we pack up and get ready like for road trips with your team, you look and you see the clubhouse managers and athletic trainer just pack all that stuff up, and sometimes it doesn't register like how much work goes into. I remember as players, staff, we'd pop into places and especially in the NFL, and people have been there for weeks already to prepare for the group to come. We're like, oh, we didn't know you were here a long time. And so it's so neat to hear your process, all the work that you have to do behind the scenes. And that's just fascinating.
Yeah, we have a pretty good workflow at this point, but I would say it takes a combined full day of work between whoever's doing it to prep for a shoot, to like make sure we have everything packed well, ready to get on a plane or wherever we're going.
And that accent, Chicago?
Southern Poland. Almost Chicago.
Love the accent you have there. New Jersey?
Austria.
Well, good day, mate. Appreciate you, Mario. Appreciate you getting on here. And we're going to get into
Nailed
now.
it.
Kept the socks on for the OnlyFans.
Love that,
Great.
dude. See, he's respecting the process here on set. That's something too, man. Like so we're in all these different places. You know, everyone has different rules, different size rooms, and that's something, you know, kind of he might not mention or Dan could mention here is the lenses. We have different lengths of lenses because sometimes we're gonna be in a tighter space, so these cameras got to be closer. Right now, we'll show some BTS, but you can't see them probably maybe 10 feet back or so. So this feels good and spacious, but sometimes it could feel pretty tight. But Dan, maybe you could walk us through like what we walk into these rooms, and I mean every time it's different, man. We've shot in a hotel, and like it's pretty much panic mode from the moment we walk in, because a lot of times, hopefully if we do it right, we have the day before, but a lot of times we don't. We shot with Rudd and Riggle, and we had to shoot in a hotel and set that up in, I think we actually gave ourselves 3 or 4 hours, which was amazing, but sometimes it's like, you got an hour or two.
Yeah,
How do we do it?
sometimes you don't. I don't know. First off, hi guys.
Wait, Dan Cangelosi, another fellow Italian. Dan has
yeah.
been alongside me for the longest out of anybody. So my first guy, my right-hand man, and he knows everything about the production, the process. Super talented behind the camera, on the keys, and we're gonna get him back on later to talk about our animated stuff, which is cool. But right now, I wanna let him talk about how we set these up, because he's our director of photography and knows how to make these things look good and the way they do, and everything you appreciate about it. This is the guy that brings it together.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just kind of have to work with what you're dealt. You know, some things are not controllable, and I think in this business, you just kind of don't sweat that. You just work with what you can control, right? I'm sure that's something that you've said a couple of times on this pod before, right? Yeah, but so we could take like the Rudd and the Riggle. It was a great hotel suite. I would love to stay there anytime, but you know, there's not like a big open space like this space. We had control over which space we use for this shoot right here, and as you can see, we're right like square in the middle of the room. Every single angle on every single camera is going to have a lot of depth, and we're just going to like, there's some really nice soft lighting because these curtains, it's going to look beautiful, and it's super easy to work with, right? Literally, like Google could turn on all the lights in here. It's pretty cool.
Pretty advanced space.
It's pretty nice. So,
And
Well,
we do
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
One, which you can answer in whichever order. You can answer however many of them you want to answer. When you walk into a space like this, what's the first thing you look for? Obviously, you're looking, like you said, for the space to put all the chairs around it. And then when you find that space, what is step 1? Is it getting this chairs all aligned, and then you line up a camera to each chair? Or kind of take me through that step.
Before you answer that, there is some process prior to getting here that we have to try to figure out that, again, is kind of on the logistic side of booking these places. Because generally we don't get to scout them because we're not necessarily in that city. So we have to go off these photos, which photos can be very deceiving.
0.5
I mean, that wide angle lens. So we're like literally asking for measurements of the rooms because we know our setup and how wide it can be. We're looking at potentially, if they can't provide it, we look at a chair as like that, like a 2-foot chair, and like how many chairs would fit there. We got to try to understand, because the worst thing would be to book it. All you guys are booked, we're all coming, we have guest book, and it's like, the space isn't gonna work. And generally, that's never gonna happen where we can't make it work, but it's possible. Some of these spaces we're looking at had a pole right in the middle of the room, and it's like, can we work around that? So there's a way early process of figuring out through photos, and Will communicating a lot with these people to figure out, can we fit in the space? Now to answer your question, what is it we do once we know the space is good and we walk in? Go.
Okay. Really, it's just where we're gonna plop down. Where are we gonna have you guys have a conversation, you know? If you noticed in our first group of episodes, we really didn't have this roundtable recording where the cameras were basically to your left, to your right, you know, to your right, to your left, just behind you. And we noticed in post that we're getting a lot of profile shots when you guys were turning. And it didn't really invite the audience into the conversation, that's the #1 goal, right? We want to have I'm not talking to you, Haas, like this all day, right? Like, you're not going to connect with me. Same for our audience.
That's
right?
what it looked like for the audience when we were in that
square.
half moon, you know?
So we then shifted to more of a round table. It makes other things more difficult logistically. Like, it's tough. You guys get in each other's way if you move up too much, right? We mention that almost every shoot. But the pros far outweigh the cons of that production-wise. I don't really think I answered that question though prior to this, which is, when I go to a space, I'm like, where are we gonna do this, right? Because everything else revolves around that.
The plopping the chairs is probably the first thing. Let's see where the chairs fit and throw up a camera, see if it works.
Yeah,
And the angle of the chairs, does that come into consideration?
Yeah, we like to put your really low so that your feet are high.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's very uncomfortable.
I'm taking a 4-hour shit. Thank you.
Yeah, you're gonna get inspected soon.
Appreciate that.
Gotta have Pete's personal fan always. Okay, big thing. Everyone always asks me, everybody, dude, those animate series you guys do are so badass.
Yeah.
The Chase Utley one, it's pretty close to 1 million views, and that was one of the first ones we ever did.
Yeah.
How in the world did you even begin to say, oh, I can make our stories into this animated series?
This is definitely Dan's brainchild. I mean, he thought this up of figuring out how to get these things done. There's multiple pieces of that process that he knows better than anybody, and honestly, if he wasn't doing them, I don't know how we get them done. So it's really cool when he started to bring these to the table. You know, they killed it, and they still do. But there's definitely a process of finding that story, which we have parameters for, right? It's like, is it shareable? Is it interesting? Is it funny? Are the people we're speaking about interesting? And are they gonna have some reach? There's so many things behind the scenes of strategy, but then, what he's focusing on really is the story and how can it look? I mean, all he's thinking about is how can that story look hilarious in an animated way, and when will that be happening? And that process is first him pulling the story and kind of approving of it as our team approves of the actual story. Then you start prompting, and then there's an approval process there. So maybe go from there.
I mean, even if I could even back up and say that it's funny how ideas evolve over time, and how you just kind of, I mean, I'm sure you guys I'm specifically used to it. You probably just write an idea down, right? And you might not utilize that idea for years. And the same thing.
I can write.
I journal.
Sorry, I shouldn't point. No. You guys journal, as I now know. But Anthony, right? We had this AIA idea for years.
Oh, by the way,
right?
we call it AIA because it's AI animated.
Got it. Yeah.
AI animated. So we say that a lot, and people probably have no idea what we're talking about.
Probably no
So these
idea.
animated series. Yeah.
So, but we had this idea for years, and we're looking for an excuse to implement it because we love the idea of famous people coming on or athletes coming on and sharing wild stories and just having some kind of visual to pair to that. We thought that would be a huge success. We're actually going to base an entire podcast around that one idea.
Yeah, that, and we always wanted to do these reenactments with others' voices. So instead of it being an animation, imagine you're telling the story kind of like in the movie Ant-Man, when he's like, I was out here and I was like, hey man, what are you doing? And it's somebody else speaking, but it's his voice coming out of his mouth. Or a drunk history style thing. And we were just so into that, and this was our fix to we can't go do live action and film these things all the time. It's an impossible feat on a small scale. So this was the fix that he brought to the table.
Do you have one, aside from the views, that you particularly enjoyed so far that you're whether the designing process or the story itself as you're making it, one that made you laugh?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure by the time this airs or this is getting utilized, the George Brett one will be out. But I am so excited for you guys to see that one.
haven't seen it yet.
Because that's like the epitome of what I thought this series would be, right? It's like, it's pretty raunchy. I mean, you guys know George Brett, obviously. So I was just like, when I heard that and when I was like, guys, do you think we could do this story? Because,
Is it the one where he shot himself?
Yes.
Is there another one?
Vegas?
Oh, they were,
Plenty.
we could have done 5 AAAs.
Which we might. We might.
Yeah.
How about, so start to finish, you mapped out the story, what you want to do. Now you're going to create the cartoons and all that. How long does it take?
Yeah. Like 2 to 3 days, probably, I would say.
Over 2 to 3 days. I mean, there's like obviously the back and forth of understanding if it's approved and stuff, but
From
it's a solid
idea to
day
draft to the
plus
final.
day to maybe 2, depending on the difficulty for him to actually do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it's just like, look, I'm working with brand new technology, right? And it's an exciting technology. It's a scary technology. But overall, it's kind of fun to tinker with, right? Because I'm not a cartoonist. I'm not an animator.
Right.
I wouldn't consider myself an animator. But here I am cranking out animations that previous to this technology would have taken weeks.
Can I
to do.
ask you guys
And now
about
we're
that real
doing it in
quick?
Don't
days.
let him fool you though. He does have some animation techniques he does manually on top of like these AI
Right.
Yes.
things
That's the
helping
thing,
us out.
because
Yeah.
I've dived in a little bit trying to just mess with AI, because I'm a kind of guy that once something's new, I kind of want to figure out a little bit just so I don't get cold cocked by it later on. And AI seems to be one of those things that is coming to this industry particularly, not so much for this side of it or what we're talking about, but the production side of it and the back end where a lot of the stuff is now automated or can be automated rather than relying on someone's skill level. Is that something that
And like you said, this is something that would usually take weeks, and now it's a
Yeah.
couple days. I feel like that's a big reason why AI is a big part of your guys' industry.
Yeah, and I don't want to mislead anyone. It's not a push of a button
Right.
by any means.
Right.
never is?
It takes a lot of skills, and just like skills that I've honed for years, that we've all honed for years. But what's cool about it is it takes a lot of the grunt work out of certain steps, right? And so they see this technology taking a lot of jobs in more like the assistant jobs, right? Like people that would string out timelines, or people that would design this or write that. Like you see it in all different fields all over the place, but it's helping managers basically be more effective
And I think
more
that's
productive.
the beautiful part of it. And I think that should take the fear away from a lot of people, is because you still have a skill set that is really irreplaceable. This thing is something that they can't get a hold of just yet anyway. And the combination of being able to use that for the mundane jobs, and then you can then focus on the stuff that you're really good at. I think that's the combination that's going to make it work.
Yeah, coming back to like creating podcasts, there are AI softwares and things that will help you edit them, pull out promos and things like that. And we've tried all these things, and there's just certain things that they don't do what we want them to do. They can't find that human element. Is the one thing I think it will always have a hard time finding. I'm sure this thing will advance to many, many things, but there's just always going to be, like you said, there's something about the human part of it that I just don't think can be replaced. I mean, who knows? We'll see. But for now, it definitely is more of an assistance to us and helps us do things that we would have never been able to do or would have had to pay a shit ton to do before. And now it's possible, you know? So it's pretty cool.
By the way, the process of creating one of these AIAs, we use 3 different AI technologies to even accomplish that too. So across the board, like,
Yeah, it's not one thing.
It's not a
It's not one
single-use
thing.
platform where you can just say, plug in a video and say, make this funny.
yeah, we're taking advantage of certain things, and just our basic approach to this too. It's just like we have a show, Digging Deep, and it's all talking heads. It's just people talking to each other, and you guys do a fantastic job of being interesting, of being entertaining, right? You're a great group. So it's kind of my job to be like, okay, how do I take this content and maybe even elevate it or give it something different, right? Like, my goal is to stop the scroll, to fight just like this horrible fight that every content creator knows, that is just like, how the hell do you stand out? How the hell you just grab someone's attention just for a couple of seconds, right?
No,
So
it's-
that's
true.
that's
That's
it's
the
a
battle.
process. It is a
the
battle.
battle.
And that's the back end, and we'll continue to the back end for sure. But actually, let's finish up before we move on to like our actual shoot day. I think there's definitely a couple more things we could touch on this setup, because we have the light, I think, is an interesting thing that we've brought into play back in other shows. that we drop into these scenes, because how do you light a circle? And about, I don't know, out of 360 degrees, we probably use a good 270 of the room for these shots, which means no one can be anywhere back here except for like this little space behind the camera, which I should take a picture because they're all like squeezed in like sardines over there. So like that, now that we shifted to this setup, there's a lot of things that have to happen, including getting a light in here, which the ideal situation for a lighting of a podcast like this would be like we had in Kansas City, which was amazing, and we were able to actually get to the ceiling. So maybe you can expand on that too, because I think it's a cool setup that if people were able to accomplish, not an easy thing to do, really makes it look really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, in conventional lightings, I mean, it is whatever you want. You basically kind of want to replicate a natural look for the most part, unless you're trying to be stylistic. But essentially, our thing is we want one big soft source that'll light people somewhat frontally, so there's some nice fall off. I mean, if you take a look around, everyone, they're pretty much lit in like a little oval right here in the front of their face, and there's some nice subtle fall off, and so it adds just a nice look.
Can you do anything to the rest of it for me, or just this particular part?
That's all we got, man. That's all we got.
Pete, I don't know how many people complimented you how beautiful you are in this podcast.
Oh,
alone,
thank you.
man. It's like every episode we talk about it.
Thank you.
He's a
Filling
beaut.
up our DMs, man.
He's a beaut. Dan, appreciate all the work you do, man.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Boy.
Thank you.
So now we got Danyel Ross, and let's not let the last name fool you. She's a Saratelli.
She sure is.
We got another Italian. Danielle is my sister. She obviously, I've known her for a very long time, and she's been working with us for a long time. But Danielle is, she's like my little sister, but she's like the big sister around here. She definitely takes care of all of us on a day-to-day basis at the office, but obviously for these shoots, takes care of all of us on set too. And there's a lot to think about, again, that while we're trying to move through the day, through the content, we got all the cameras rolling and making sure that we don't mess anything up, essentially.
I have to ask a question straight up, because
Let's go.
Eric and I talk about this often. Do you ever stop?
No. Well,
It feels like you
I
are
do,
just
but
on the go
The Instagram
from
stories
6
are like
o'clock.
that. Mine are like this one.
Until
Boom, boom,
midnight.
boom, 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 boom.
I get really good sleep. So like people ask me like, how do you do it all, right? Like I get my 8 hours. I don't watch much TV.
You don't watch Diggin Deep?
I listen to Diggin Deep in the office constantly, like every day.
Okay. I have a question, big one for you. So, everything schedule-wise, everything is all planned out to the hour, right? To the T, to the minute. What happens when we're on set? Something doesn't go as planned accordingly.
Always.
And you have to kind of deal with this, but you have to deal with it in a quiet way because everything's happening.
There's a lot
live
of
on set.
whispering back there and stuff. Just as before, like I forgot to put the time rep, right? Like so, and then I want to tell you there's plus 7 minutes, which I haven't told you yet. We're 7 minutes behind.
Good to know. I thought that was a little behind.
We just deal with it as it comes, right? Like it's easy. It's easy.
The cool
guys.
part is like worst case scenario is this. You guys kill it doing this part. So like when there's something going on behind the scenes, whether that's somebody's arriving and we got to figure out how to get them because they're going to come up that elevator behind Sua, we'll figure it out.
Or someone random walks in the middle of the interview.
Oh
that
my
you're having.
God, that was
Paul,
really.
who is this
That was
person?
Paul Rudd's mom, right? Like, which we didn't know at first.
is
I thought it
funny.
was just a sweet little old lady that was lost that came into and like we're all looking at her, and I'm like, I'm like trying to go like this because I couldn't speak, and I'm like, come over here, and then she takes out her camera, she starts taking pictures, and I'm like, can I help you? Are you lost? She's like, I'm Paul Rudd's mom, and I'm like, oh, come on in. And then she went around the back and came through the other door, and I was like, no.
And as I
You walk
mentioned, the
wherever you
setup
want.
was
She
like,
was
yeah, no
so
matter where you
sweet.
are, you're in the shot.
She's
And
like,
she
I'm
was
putting
just,
out
had no idea we were
fires. I'm like,
filming.
so am I. You're the fire. You're the fire.
So normally when families work together, there can be some level of conflict that is naturally there, but you guys seem to have such a very healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Smooth. It's pretty smooth.
What does that mean? We're like best friends. Anthony and I have been like best friends forever. Like
The real stuff comes out on camera. What we got, Tony?
No, it's good, man. Yeah, we are like best friends. It's pretty easy. Oddly, yeah, no, we really don't have any run-ins.
Right.
I mean, I don't even know how else to say that. It's as easy as it goes. We don't really even have to
Like a
talk
good
about
marriage
it.
is like a good friendship. You shouldn't have a lot of conflict, and it's amazing. But that's
mean-
an environment you guys have already created here. Everybody,
Right.
it feels like family more than anything else.
Right, not just us, like everyone, even you guys, like this is such like a nice crew to work with,
Yeah.
right? Like, and we all
It
are
is
just,
fun. What I love about it too is, so we have a bunch of guys that play baseball specifically, sports, baseball, all that type of stuff. But What I love is how we evaluate every episode after, and Danyel will give us perspective from not a baseball player, because I remember one of them in Arizona, it was like, hey, that was all baseball. Like, I know baseball and I still didn't understand what you guys were talking about. So that team aspect of being able to understand, okay, like, I feel comfortable enough to say, hey, Haz, that wasn't really a good question, or you should hammer this question a little more. So with that being said, how many times do you want to say something, and how many times do you just let it slide, and have you gotten a little more and more comfortable as the shoots go?
I feel, I've known you since you signed, right? So like, we go back, and I don't feel uncomfortable telling you like that maybe this wasn't great, but it's really nice. You guys are really like, I feel like Sue really loves my opinion for some reason. Like, it's really nice. You two women.
Who has a bigger smile, Danyel or Moylan?
Who's your favorite? Speaking of uncomfortable, who's your favorite between us? Thank you. It's me.
In order.
Yeah, you guys, you make it really easy. So I don't, it's just, I think my opinion's important because I'm the only girl in this room usually. So it's nice to see a different perspective. Even though I grew up around baseball, like, it's nice to see things a little from the outside.
Love that.
Than what you guys are looking at.
Yeah, it's cool. That was nice, because not something I don't think we think about on set, to be like, oh, that was all baseball talk. Because to me, I'm like, oh, cool.
Because that's
keep
that's
bringing
what
it.
we know, and it's
Right.
for us it's entertaining. But there's probably 80% of the population that's like, okay, move
But
on.
also, like, that's like the whole point of this podcast is to get more of that, like, brotherhood feel, and more of the inside stories, and not just baseball, right? Like, maybe behind the scenes stories of baseball, not so much just like the surface level.
What were you feeling when you hit that 3-run home run? Like, we know
Excitement.
it felt great.
Energy in the theme.
Speaking of behind the scenes, that's something that you take care of a lot too. The behind the scenes photos and videos that we put on stories and Instagram, and just post, just so we have them. She's generally the one taking most of them. Now, granted, everyone takes out their phone at some point, and we do have a camera on set, but she really handles that and is able to post that stuff along the way, which is a job in itself. I mean, how many photos and videos are you dealing with going back and
I
forth?
have to
between all three?
offload my phone constantly because I have, from these shoots alone, like almost like 1,000 every time. Like, and it just takes up all my space. But like, my phone's always glued to my hand. I'm always just trying to capture everything. It's hard. There's so many moments, and like to get everyone like in it is tough. But
I was recently, it reminds me of your role for the group. And so I was talking to an executive for a team, and I said, hey, how are things going? He goes, oh, I'm in the middle of hiring a new person, but this is going to be very difficult. I said, what kind of person? He goes, I don't know the title, but it's going to be a heart person. I said, what do you mean? He goes, we're a bunch of very highly competitive people in this sports industry, and we're missing a heart person, someone to check in on us, like, hey, how are we doing? How's your family? And I think I can speak for everybody. Like, you're the heart person for this, for the group, and we want to be the best. We want to change the world. We all want to be very particular, and we have stickers on the floor that everything has to be perfect. And then we have Danyel. How are you? How's your family? How's your grandmother who just passed away? Those little things that make the team, all of us collectively, just run. And I think that's that it can't be understated, just the role that you play for all of us.
You're now his favorite, by the way. So
Yeah,
well
there you go.
done.
I just wanted brownie points. I wanted brownie.
I really like that. I've been called the glue, which I like
the
as
glue.
well.
Yes,
but I
yes,
really like the
yes,
heart.
yes.
Like, I feel like my role is to make sure everyone's happy. Right, your bellies are full, you're drinking water, but like I want everyone feeling good, smiling, like just having a good time.
How about, how do you keep this guy feeling good? Because like you said, there's tape on the floor, everything's immaculate. So knowing what he likes as well, I'm sure you said you get 8 hours of sleep, but you gotta lose a couple on those shoot
But
days.
he doesn't get 8 hours of sleep, and I'm always like, I could tell, like, just from his eyes, like, you.
It's true. It's true.
No, really, he gets these back like instantly. Like, right, Will? I turn to Will, like, and I'll be like, Anthony didn't sleep.
You guys are
last
talking
night.
about me?
He looks exhausted.
It was like, what do you mean? Bullshit.
Why aren't you sleeping?
He looks like shit today, huh?
Drink your water, everyone. Like,
Big hydration. I'm glad that she brings that level of heart to it, because as much as I love all of you guys and love everything we're doing, I'm the manic guy that has to oversee it all in a sense, or at least I think I do. And my mind is like seeing every little thing from the marks on the ground to where that camera's sitting. And I think everyone appreciates it to an extent. And I know I'm probably a pain in the ass too, but it's all out of, putting on a good show and getting us, moving us along and succeeding. So, but Danyel brings that, that family vibe, which I think again we've built here, which is cool. So the point of this show to like build something, in our case building a podcast, I think that's very important to have somebody around that if you're going to be doing group things like this that often, have the person that brings the heart. I like that, the heart guy or the heart gal.
I also would like us to know what every body part for each of us, we each need to be labeled a body part from now on. So that's your job is to go home. You're the heart. What are the rest of us?
Well, you're the sledge. We already got you. No, we'll figure that part out. We might take that out. We got a lady on set. We obviously need you here, so thank you so much, my lovely sister.
Thank you.
Danielle does it all.
Nailed it.
Good job.
Thank you.
All right, Lewis. Now we're gonna get along this podcast process with Lewis. He is our lead editor and is taking care of everything on the back end. He's actually barely on set. Obviously, he came here in the middle of the show just to sneak on. He's like, I can't be left out. We have a lot of FOMO around here. Everyone around here has a lot of FOMO. Can't be left out of anything. We all like to be a part of it. So Lewis does a lot on the back end, but I'm gonna have him talk about that process because this is where it actually gets the most interesting in my opinion, because we've taken years to set this up. He's worked at places like Yahoo and seen these processes, and I hope he can speak good things about the processes we've set up because they're pretty intricate.
Yeah, it's definitely been a whirlwind. We kind of, crafted this podcast from the ground up. I came in, he told me the idea, implemented it that night.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that line, guys.
Yeah, waste no time.
A little Ron Wash drop.
Little Ron Wash inspo.
Wait for the stand-ups.
Yeah, and this is one of the things I've really loved working on. I see the creativity, I see the passion everybody brings from the production and the post-production side. I'm always the guy behind the scenes. I'm never on camera, but just to take this time with you guys, just to sit down to just talk about the process, the post-production process of how this gets created visually and how we kind of put it out to the world, put it out to the viewers, put it out to the audience is really, really great.
And there's a lot of steps there. So I think the first thing that happens is when we get back, we unload all this footage, which we're doing throughout the shoot, and then, getting that back home.
Give me a perspective.
Yeah.
Gigs, how many gig of content do you bring back?
Well, what is it? 500 gigs per show.
500 per show.
Yeah, per show. So we come back with terabytes of footage, and we have our in-house server that we have our 5 edit bays in the studio, so guys are able to access that server very easily. So everyone's able to work, but we also have a VPN where you can remote in, so these guys can get on from their home systems, or we can team viewer into the actual computers. There's all kinds of ways that we are never going to be shut out, because who knows what happens and when. Somebody might call and say, we need this clip. We need to take this, put this up, take this down. Like, things happen on the fly when we're putting stuff out there. And then, again, God forbid, we need to make a change on a Monday or a Sunday to release something on a Monday. These guys still have access to it. So we've created, again, that operation that is very accessible to our entire group, and everyone has their ways of getting to whatever we need. They do a pretty good job of it. But the process of unloading all of those gigs, sometimes we transcode and create proxies so they become smaller, so these guys can work from different locations. Generally, we're in the office, but what are the steps from maybe the string outs to, we use what's called Notion to organize everything. Talk through that, because this is something we've built in-house, and it's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I'm a big Notion guy. So Notion is kind of like, it's like a big Excel spreadsheet kind of, but everything's organized. We'd see exactly every clip that we have, every social promo, the episodes, the teasers. It's a lot that goes into just building one episode. So we created kind of like a document that categorizes everything, so anybody who goes on it knows exactly what's being worked on and what's finalized. So everyone is on the same page, and it's amazing. Will kind of helped create that, helped craft that.
Do you have to, like Excel, do you have to come up with the formulas yourself to make it work, or is it all done for you?
It's something like that. It's kind of a little easier than formulas. It's all kind of handled on the
More like
back end.
filtering?
Okay.
Yeah, it's more like filtering
Right.
and such like that.
So
But,
so we have these naming systems for all these different things that we put out there, right? From a promo to a clip to a teaser to AIAs to
AIAs.
full episodes to what else is there? Shorts and
YTC,
YTCs,
YouTube
which is a YouTube clip. Like we have names for all these different things, which they then in a drop down, let's call it one of the columns drop down, you can select what that is. They also then put the name or description of it. There's probably a status. I couldn't even tell you. They could tell you better than I. But there's probably a status of what's where it's at in the process. If it's being held, we actually pull more things than we put out there. So. Gallucci,
Like social-wise, yeah, social-wise.
So Gallucci will generally do this, or now Dom, will be on here shortly. There'll be a string out, right? So the first thing they do is they put together a full run of the episode, not taking out any of the content, right? So cutting all the cameras so it kind of looks the part, and they can watch these things down and then note what they thought was interesting, which we call a pull. So the pull gets listed in Frame.io, is another software we use, and then now the entire team knows what we're interested in pulling. We'll then chop that down because it might be 30 pulls and we don't necessarily need 30 assets, which take time to finish, finalize, and create. So it might get chopped down to, do you know the numbers right now?
We do 3 promos, 3 clips, a teaser, and then YTCs, which are for YouTube, are pulled from the final episode.
And then shorts get created out
And
of
then
that.
shorts
for
get created
YouTube.
out of clips and promos,
Now,
which goes on YouTube.
What's cool about this Notion, you can search as well. So if we put in Ron Washington as part of the description, if we didn't finalize that and something pops up with Ron, we can be like, oh man, let's go look at how many Ron clips we have and search it out and either finalize it, or maybe if it already is, we can pull it and use it again. But there's just too many good moments to actually do them all. So we can always go back as needed, but we try to like really limit it to what we think is interesting. And that's on these guys behind the scenes, again, to figure out like content relevance and what our audience is listening to and what do they want to hear. So there's so much extra that I wish we could put everything out. It just is, we have thousands. I mean, we definitely already have thousands of assets.
Right.
Is there just this a general interest? Like, say for instance, we have this smorgasbord of information and content that we filmed. Is it possible that an event happens, we go back and say, did we happen to mention something like that on our podcast, and a keyword gets plugged in, and then all of a sudden it comes up and you can go find it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Incredible.
that system is created. And again, it's more for them organizing. I would say it's even more for them organizing what's actually being worked on and what's completed, so that when it moves from Lewis to Will to caption and or QC and finalize, like everyone knows exactly where it's at. So, because it could move through again, Mariusz might come in and work on the teaser, so that pushes to Lewis to understand that it's done, and he might double check it and then send it to Will. So like if that wasn't there though, no one knows where anything is in the process.
You're all having to do it independently and then try to come together, and like building a bridge, just hope it meets in the middle.
Yeah.
correctly.
So it's not as simple as, again, on the back end of this, it's not just we throw this on a timeline and it gets put out there. We do trim these down sometimes. Like generally we're pretty good at, you guys are great. We don't need to like take too much out, but it might be something where the guests might not want to have said, and that's why we produce this. So it's very comfortable for the guests to be open and vulnerable, right? They could say whatever they want, because if they really at the end are like, I'm not sure about that, we're perfectly happy to take it out. But like it keeps these conversations very open and easy. And then these guys are the ones that take care of all that in the back end and make sure that everyone feels good and we put out good content.
And everybody looks good too.
Everyone looks good.
I love that. From a post-production standpoint, because I've seen the raw uncut footage or the version of that. When you go back and that's all uploaded, and then you go and say Pete's saying something funny and I laugh or do a reaction to it, and during the final episode it shows Pete saying it, then the one camera shows my reaction, then it goes back to Pete. Is that you guys literally watching the raw uncut version saying, okay, we want camera 4 on Haas from 30 seconds to 32 seconds and then back to camera 3 on Pete? Or is there stuff that kind of help you speed that process up?
No, that's all done manually. So we all, when we're stringing it out, we multicam it manually. So each track, so it's like you, Pete, Sua, they're all on different tracks, and we literally just key in manually, like, okay, we want Haas here, we want Moylan here, we want Sua here. But yeah, it does take a little time. There is some like AI software to also do it, but we love doing it manually. We love putting our passion into it. It has to be perfect. At least for me, it has to be perfect. I just love the craft. So like, and the vision that we all have, and I like to bring my all into that, even if it takes a little longer.
I love that, dude. And we really do kind of overproduce these things. So again, this is a level of like manic OCD in a sense for all of us, and I think that's really what's really cool
Just
and
where
why
you
these come
come
out
from
so.
too. That's just.
I mean, it is the world. It's very, you can get so particular with these things, and I've been trying to get better at like letting things just like sometimes they don't need to be perfect, right? We have a saying in the office that I think Dan came up with, 99.9%. Like, yeah, we can be just about perfect, and we will try to be, but like things can just slide sometimes, and it's not going to be that big a deal. It's not going to kill us, but the idea and why these things look so good, the idea of being so perfect in a sense, or trying to be as perfect as we can, is a level that I don't think a lot of people take it to, and hopefully that's something of value to the people that are watching, to the people that want to be a part of this from a brand perspective, and like our message that we can get across. Like we hope that helps sell that idea, right? And what we're bringing to the people. So there's a lot of madness behind it. And again, he said there's some AI softwares, but like to see what you're doing, how you're laughing or how you're laughing, and how big that reaction is, the AI can't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's so important they literally go through and key that in.
With as many hours as you've seen all of us, could you like, our mannerisms? You could probably imitate our
Oh, we got one. We definitely got
all
one.
of us. I bet we all have like
5 things I always say.
I always think about that.
This guy.
They called out my hand
I always
gestures
think
in
about you
Kansas
guys
City.
teasing us.
What is mine? What is
Look at
mine?
Sue's face on this.
I'll tell you
like this.
Yeah. Every time I do the hands, I'm like,
We need to know what they are right now.
You guys,
What are they?
you guys have no idea how much they bitch about you.
Oh,
That's fine. I don't care.
I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to say anything.
What do I do all the time? What do I do all the time? What are my habits?
What are some of our things?
Well, I know one for him
what's
that
mine?
you guys
What's
are
mine?
like, you talk but don't talk. Is one of the things you'll be like,
Talk but don't talk.
so like they're like turning up the volume.
Yeah,
Did
so
you
I'm
say-
like,
did you
wait,
say
do I have
anything?
to wait? Oh no, he's not. Gonna
Your mouth moves.
Talk without talking.
Oh my God, what's mine?
Your mouth
do I
moves
do?
in reaction to somebody. Like,
awesome.
but you don't say anything. So now they.
So I'm
they're
like, oh, this is a really good cutaway, but he's not saying anything.
Okay. All right. Can you just have him
there
voice
are
it like
moments.
that?
So going back to that first conversation, like one-on-one. So if someone's saying something, oh no, wait, that's crazy. I was on a podcast previously, and I'd be in a group, and I'd be like, oh no, wait, that's crazy. But there's like multiple of us, and my producer, the editors, would be like, stop giving your little things because like we're picking up on your mic.
Right.
And sorry, I'm touching my mic right now.
We'll leave that one.
So, but yeah. So now it's funny because I want to say something with one-on-one, but I'm just like moving my mouth. That's funny. You guys catch that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the madness of all that too. Just like
Yeah,
you tap in your
touching the
mic,
mic.
these guys will go in and fix every one of those.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're muting the curses just to be a little bit more fan friendly. But
Right.
there's a lot of work that goes into every one of those little things from the audio side. And we'll bring in Will next to talk about kind of the technical things that we do. But Lewis, appreciate you, man, pushing all the buttons back there.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, like, I think the biggest one that we kind of crafted was Diggin Weekly.
Yeah, Diggin Weekly. Diggin Weekly is really
Diggin'
cool,
Weekly.
and it's going to get off the line of like what this podcast is, but we do have another show that is a virtual setup with Haas and Moylan, other way around. But
We're together. We're one.
they do it from home virtually, and we have this really cool system we've crafted on the back end. We do post-produce it, so even though they shoot it live, and again, they crush it, we never have to really do anything to it, but we put it in this this style, this look that is has a border, and they're in their like boxes, which is really cool. But what's crazy is we shoot it on Thursday morning, and it's ready to go by Thursday night. And it's it's a 20 or 30 minute show with graphics and these other things, and we don't live cut it, so it's all done afterwards. But the system we've set up, Lewis really put this together. This is so technical, but essentially he just has to push a button to lay them out in these different setups. So it could be a 2-shot, it could be a 2-shot with a graphic, it could be, maybe you can expand on it more because it's pretty intricate, but like to set up. But now it's like he can literally just go doop, 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 and it like moves all your shots around. It reframes automatically. It's really cool. It's so something we should probably do another episode on. To be honest with you, but
that's.
but he put that together, and we're able to turn those shows around with that look within a day, which is really
the
cool.
fact that we can turn it around that quickly, not only the full show but also all our social assets as well. Is crazy.
It is
and
crazy.
where everything's just already built in. So like usually you have to like add graphics in, add all that kind of background template stuff. But we templatize the whole project where you just lay it out you cut the cameras, and it's done.
Why do you call them assets? Because that's what there is. It's content is assets now.
Every I mean, you know, I guess they're not physical these days, but every
digital
piece of
asset,
content's a digital asset.
digital social
I guess it's
asset,
just what the world calls them. I don't think we made that one up. We make up a lot of things, but not that
Right.
one. Yeah. Lewis, appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Louis.
Love you back there,
Thanks,
buddy.
buddy.
Right on, brother.
Wow, Willie, you're gonna hear this name throughout a lot of our
He's
productions.
wild. It's beautiful.
Mostly out of Haz's mouth. You'll hear him shouting him out to pull the Oprah clip or fix something he said. But while Willie's behind the scenes again, throughout the whole process, it's hard to again pinpoint exactly what all these guys do because they do so much. But Will Politan, lead producer, so he's doing all the logistical stuff for us, getting everything together, and oversees a lot of the post process, or if not all of it. So he's generally finishing them, I would think, right? That's he kind of QCs and finalizes the assets, does that final watch down. You know, Lewis said how crazy he was about being perfect. He watches them down one more time to make sure they're as perfect as can be. So what is that process from, I guess, after we pick up from where we pick the promos, we pick which ones, they're all finally edited, it gets into your hands now, what are you doing?
Yeah, so it's anytime you have that many assets, which it's like, you know,
Assets, they keep saying it.
I mean, I'm so
we're
in on
delivering a lot of assets.
Yeah.
I love
strong,
assets.
Willie.
You know, things can, you know, just slip through. A lot of times the layers on, or, you know, the audio's on the wrong layer, or we didn't add this effect, or we didn't throw it through the submix, or things like that. So it's very particular things that can make a big difference, I think, in the long run. And yeah, so the process is really just like finding any of those holes, any of those things that can kind of miss or make it through. So yeah, we're really particular about everything, and it sucks if something wrong makes it through, but you know.
But that's the 99.9.
Yeah, that's the 99.9.
9.9. I might be stealing Sua's question here, but that process, do you have like a checklist of, I need to make sure this is good, this, and this? How did you create that, come about that? And how many, like, I'm sure that took years and years to come up.
In the beginning, it was like, we would find like sort of what were the things that were going wrong, and yeah, like adding it to a list and having a checklist. I'd say at this point, I could kind of do it in my sleep a little bit because we're doing it every week. We're pumping out 2 shows a week. So I don't really like need it as much. But in the beginning, it was like really important, where it's like we need an SRT for captions. We need an audio version. Like Diggin Weekly, we make multiple versions now to have more disclaimers for, you know, the FanDuel reads. Yeah, and then Diggin Deep is just so many promos, and it's like the great episodes. We have so many assets. I think in the beginning we started, I think we were pulling like 30 assets per episode. So it's just like so much to go through and compressing all of them, getting it ready for social media so we could send it to people to post and things like that. So yeah, I think in the beginning it's very much like checklists, like should be making checklists and double checking. But at this point, it's just like you live and breathe it for long enough. You just sort of like, you just do it.
Your eye for detail that we deal with when we're setting up new cameras and such, is that the kind of personality you have across your whole life, or is that particularly for this job?
This job and food.
Yeah,
Very particular about food, this guy.
Yeah, I'm a big food guy.
That's why you had
Italian.
no problem with my coffee order this morning, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, no. I made the guy. I sent it
You
back,
did.
dude. Yeah, I
That's
sent it back.
incredible. And I was so happy you
This
did.
is not a sledgiato. Like,
I was so happy you did, man. I was so pumped.
no, and you ran it through too. I mean, I know you're a foodie as well,
Yeah.
so you know, kindred spirits there.
Sure.
But yeah, I'd say I did a grad program, and at that program, I feel like I learned how to like learn fast and on the fly and not be afraid to fail. And I think that like I've brought that to everything that I do, whether or not it's like research and, you know, figuring out Notion, you know, figuring out new cameras and things like that. We bought new cameras, new systems, you know, ending up on choosing primes for this show, like all those things where it's like you have to be, instead of going back to what you're comfortable with or what you're used to, it's like be willing to fail and then like learn on the fly.
So does that sound like an athlete to you?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah.
Will was ready to go for this. I love
Ready
it.
to high perform.
I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
I got one for you. So Dan brought up how AI has changed a lot of this, right? It's changed the game. So now we are a podcast, a show that's being produced every Wednesday. We're coming out with episodes. So you're on that weekly routine of creating the episode, and then a new AI comes about, a new system. I'm gonna dumb this down big time, but it's like playing Call of Duty on the controller. And you use the mouse and keyboard, you can actually, like the reaction time in the game, you kill people faster than that. But I play the game. I don't have a week or two to sacrifice sucking with the mouse and keyboard to try and then up my game to that speed. So when you're coming with a show every Wednesday and something new comes about, how do you then try this out without wasting time to get this done? Is it something that you just try here and there and then you fully buy in, or how do you go about doing all that?
Yeah, I think adopting a new technology or a new thing, like you have to be willing to do it. But like you're saying, like we're coming out with episodes so often that it's hard to sort of fit it in. I think it's just a scheduling thing where if we're traveling, right, if we're doing another shoot soon, it's like we probably can't commit the time to necessarily learn an entirely new system and upend everything. But if we have like a couple weeks, we have a lot of episodes banked, like we can absolutely adopt something new.
Let's talk about that. I mean, so we shoot all these episodes, we kind of bulk them together, and we have anywhere from 6 to 14, I think, has been kind of our range that we shoot at one time. How far ahead do we generally get to be able to put these things out consistently?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like I know for Arizona, we were like banked for a long time, but we did like 14 in Arizona, which is like crazy. We were good for months. But here, I think on this shoot, we're trying to get at least 5 or 6 probably including this one. And yeah, that keeps us good for 6 weeks.
I think we have 3.
Oh, my chain.
Got him?
Oh yeah, sure.
It's just put this right in the episode. Actually,
Guys, we got Billy.
I saw it. I saw it. I didn't want to say anything, but I saw it.
Billy making an appearance.
I did see it.
You know what's happening.
This is good.
I feel like I'm stepping on toes by saying something. I didn't want to do that.
But it was dangling.
it's just like touching them.
You know what's
Sorry,
happening
guys.
here? This is actually perfect time. We can keep moving. Billy wanted to make his way into the episode.
Am I good?
He's the only one.
I moved my chair just to ease.
Look at the marks. He's the only one we didn't work into the episode. So audio-wise, just so you know, and Will sets this stuff up, is generally like we're here.
As the Rev Squad goes by.
We're in the New York area now, but usually we're not shooting at home for us. Like we're here in Jersey City, so here we have kind of our local peeps that we go to, and Billy's one of our guys, so we appreciate having him here. But generally on the road, although we do fly most of our crew, generally all of it, because again, that very comfortable setting is hard to replicate when you're just bringing in random people. The audio person is usually the one guy that is like the local. And we try to, we usually go through recommendations or someone we know or someone we worked with, but that's something we have to deal with on a shoot. Is like the one slot we usually have to fill locally is the audio person at this moment, which Will deals with. But back to that post process, I do think it's interesting on the versions. The versioning is crazy. We do these full episodes, but then they got to put one out that goes on the audio platforms, which they remove the intro, shutter, sound effects, like as simple as stuff like that. People might not realize like what's being done back there to put it out from a video perspective or an audio perspective, because there's these shutters in that are doing all of our poses in the intro that doesn't make any sense when you're just hearing these shutters go off. So we're actually thinking about putting in, and this is actually something we should talk about, is we want to put in maybe like an intro of like who you're about to hear from in an audio version. So it might be your voice saying, this week on Diggin Deep, Paul Rudd, the star of Ant-Man, whatever. Just do something like that. So from an audio, because they're not seeing who the person is, right? Then and it gives them a little more information. So things like that, again, always adjusting on the fly. Like we're always just trying to make it better. But that finalizing process is very interesting. There's color, there's sound, there's captioning, there's QCing. So before it gets to Will, they generally look they're not colored. They're very flat is how they end up looking at first. So he has to deal with making sure the colorist gets us our what's called a LUT and all these things. I'll let you talk about that process to get it to the finish line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to point out too, like we all chip in, where we have to. It's not just me doing one thing, or Lewis doing one thing, or Mariusz or Dan or anybody.
Wild but humble. Wild but humble. Gotta love that.
But yeah, so to color it, we actually
off camera. Will's like, I'm the best. I'm the one that makes this show go, man.
This place collapses.
Absolutely not. No. Would never. So I don't know how much I can go into detail about this. We have a very secretive colorist, but he gives us LUTs, and these are special LUTs. LUTs are lookup tables for those who don't know. That's how you can, essentially take a log image, which is like a grayscale image, and make it look, colored and ready to go. So we generally have him make LUTs for every setup that we have. So we put those in, we adjust those. We have like a secret concoction of,
this is the
of
secret.
sound mixing
Secret
techniques
sauce.
that, yeah,
Which
secret
we
sauce.
have gotten many compliments on publicly.
Yeah.
People talking about how good these sound.
Yeah.
Which I think is unique to our show too, is because generally a lot of podcasts have these mics in front of them, which sound beautiful. That's what they're meant for. We're in an open space with the mics underneath. We got a guy there, playing with the dials to try to make sure like who's talking. It's all dialed in because your mic hears me.
Yeah.
And on the back end, these guys are turning those down in between or using some special settings that hopefully turn them down. And we amplify it and through some AI softwares as well, but they sound amazing. I love listening to them. Like
Dude.
I'm so proud of how these things sound. They sound so good.
Absolutely.
And that works with car noises like we've just had to deal
Yeah.
with. And certain settings are going to have different things you have to try to deal with. So it's just amazing to hear it on the back end, knowing what we've heard sitting here while we're filming.
Yeah, and I think an interesting story is, well, one thing for the people listening who are thinking about maybe doing a podcast, right? These are hidden lavs, right? You can't see the mics, so it's generally one of the harder things to deal with, right? You get rustle, you get chains bouncing like we just had. Yeah, and you get more bleed over, right? So like if you have a mic that's more directional, it's pointed just at me. This one is kind of like here, so it's capturing me really well, but it's also going to get you and you. So something we're always looking at is like, who's the closest person? Like, so when I'm talking, like I may be worried about your mic, I may be worried about your mic, not so much Haas or Pete. And it's like the little things like that. You have to have a Swiss Army knife to deal with all these different things like chains. Or in Arizona, a good story is, we walked into this Airbnb that was like this incredible Airbnb, huge ceilings, kind of like this, but I don't know what it was about the place, but it was like it was the most echoey room like I've ever been in, and we were like, we can't. It's either this or outside, which is like outside's like an even bigger nightmare, right? Because it's like you have the pool, you had like all the
Light
obviously
changing,
like
uncontrollable light. Like
nature. So cutting that together would be really rough. And then we found the software that's it's called D-Reverb. There's a secret, but talk about on the fly. Like we were like, we need to find something that's going to make this audio work in this setting. We had to
or
implement
our
it that
entire
night.
shoot we're like screwed. It's going to sound terrible. Or we got to shoot outside, which is going to be terrible because it would just look probably bad half the time because all the
I
light.
would be sweating.
You would be sweating. That's a problem.
Yeah, dealing with the fan noise
Yeah.
24/7 when I'm around.
But we found this on the fly. We were like, all right, what technologies are out there that we can try to remove the reverb, which is one of the hardest things to do in audio. But now it is a click of the button.
Wow.
It was wild how well it worked. And we tested it before anybody came in and we were like, I think we're good. So let's just roll with it.
Yeah,
and
we
it
tested
worked
it.
out really well.
Yeah, implemented it that night.
Yeah.
That's what
Actually,
that's
maybe
what you have to do.
second round. We did, dude. We should actually.
And what did I do?
Yeah. The sayings.
Freddie Fruit. Big dog.
Big dog. Dude, that happens too behind
Major
the
League team. You're gonna implement that night. 2 weeks.
That happens behind the scenes a lot too. These guys hear this stuff so many more times than even our audience does that these sayings become in-house sayings.
Oh, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Is it true that
yes.
if you eat leftover pizza and put it in the oven, that the bottom crust bakes a little more and it's actually better than real life pizza?
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of that actually is on the second bake, it gets crispier. Like a lot of people like the well done pizza.
You like the parchment paper?
They don't
or you
want
just
they don't
go-
want the flop.
No,
Like
there's
Dave Portnoy
zero
says, you
flop.
can't no flop.
Can't
Parchment paper or no parchment paper?
I think it would help. Yeah,
Does-
why not?
it does help.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
telling
Probably
you.
sops
I know
up
the
some of
answer
that
to the
oil
question.
too.
I'm just
yeah.
giving you a chance to answer.
No, I mean, I love it. We got to eat
Willie.
together.
Willie, no flop for sure,
Yeah.
man. That was awesome. Thank you.
Willie, no flop. Welcome in. Anyway.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Now we get through this whole review, color, QC. These assets are finally completed. Now what happens, right? We got all these things sitting around, and we got to make them work and put them out into the public. We get to this post process, or we get through the post process. Now we have all these assets, and we got to get them out there. Get them out there through our social platforms. Get them out there through your social platforms. And we got Dom, another fellow Italian, Muccilo, sitting in to talk to you about how we get that done. Dom has recently joined us and has been a huge asset, another asset. We have a lot of assets around here, to upping our game. We've seen a lot of improvements just from some of the things he's implemented that night, and it's been cool. It's been great to have you, dude. And we want to talk to tell us about what it's like from when we actually have these things ready to go. How does it get to these guys? How does it get on our platforms? What's our cadence and things like that?
Yeah, sure. I'm kind of like the last leg here for all of this stuff, from the pre-production process to everything getting set up. You know, you guys killing the interviews, Will and Lewis doing a great job with the editing. Then it kind of comes to me of like, hey, these are the best things. How do we package them on social? How does this look on YouTube from a thumbnail perspective? One of the first things me and Lewis did on the first day I got here was just kind of dial in what our new thumbnail approach would be. 1 billion people watch, or 1 billion hours of content are watched on YouTube each and every day. So it's like, how do we just get 1% of that, you know, or 1/10 of a percentage of that? So that's thinking about everything from what an in point is on a good clip, whether we're doing split screens on, you know, different shorts editing styles. Like, there's so much that kind of goes into it. But yeah, I'm sort of the last leg in terms of just hitting publish on all these things and just making sure I'm doing a good job of optimizing and not just screwing anything up. I'm trying to double check spellings, dialing in like when we want to post. Is it 12? Is it 3? And just kind of figuring out as we go, but knowing that we're implementing the best practices that night of what's going to go out and what's going to be consumed. So
How each platform is so different, right?
So
Like,
different.
the TikTok user wants this story told this way versus Instagram versus YouTube. So how much of the same clip do you have to really change to fit each platform?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think that kind of goes back to our process of what's a clip versus what's a promo. We try to keep everything underneath 1 minute and 30 seconds as just a baseline of like, hey, we're probably not going to get an audience member to watch a full 1 minute and 30 clip. So that's just trying to break off into like, TikTok allows you to do up to like 10 minutes. So we know that's good for TikTok. We know that's good for Instagram. We know that's good for Reels. But then how are we cutting down a good clip that's maybe 1 minute and 30 seconds and saying, okay, wait, this could be really, really good for YouTube Shorts. Let's get this under 60 seconds, 59-ish, and let's fire that out there as well.
Are there any basic principles to videos that will go viral? I know people watching this, like you want your stuff to be seen by people. Are there some basic principles that you use when you're posting, when you're publishing this work?
Yeah, and I think that kind of starts from looking at a raw string out. I know I was just talking to you about looking at the raw string out for Rob Riggle. The first one I did was for George Brett. So just sitting down and like just chilling, watching the episode and saying,
What an entry point.
okay, this is an amazing moment that we need to package for social. And that might live between 3 minutes and 30 seconds and 5 minutes and 30 seconds, but what are the things that we need to know in terms of like, what's the most important thing? What's the hookiest thing? Do we need a split screen? Should we show Haas with George in there so we know that this is setting the scene for what's about to be told? What's that sentence going to be? Is there something in the middle that we can maybe take out that's going to, you know, help retention and move the story along? So we're really trying not to waste any shots or any moments, even like word to word.
And you're
gets
also
that
trying not to kill what the actual content is by selling it on the front end and people saying, I already know what the ending is.
Exactly.
There's just so much out there, man. It's like, it's wild as we go through this process of trying to build and grow. There's so much content out there, and it's like, again, we've all mentioned it, how hard it is to stand out. And like, as you see this, like how this actually comes together, there's so much thought that goes into it. And it's crazy because like, you could do this on your phone. You could do a podcast on your phone and you could just throw things out there and something could work whether you think it's great or not. Like, you could put all the time and effort into making a clip that you think is gonna go the distance and all these people are gonna see it and it gets nothing. And then you put out something you just shot on your phone, maybe talking about something that just happened, and it like goes wild. And it's unpredictable. Right, and we wish there was a perfect formula or a predictable way to do it. And I think just for anyone watching that's trying to get into this space, like, you don't need all of this. You don't. You can certainly make it work, and you can go viral, which is a word we try not to use because it's hard to make anything go viral. But there's so much depth in it from our perspective because we're trying to build a business around this. But I don't want anybody to be deterred that you can't do this at home by yourself. But again, these are all the ways and things you can add to your process that hopefully can make a better podcast for yourself or however you need to do it.
It's like a baseball player. If the content is good enough, you will be found. But as far as this is concerned, this is extreme level, and this is the reason why we're going to stand out, because it's not just this, it's everything around us.
Yeah. Every role, every person on the team, all that. How about, tell us about controlling an actual page, because we're a little different. We're not trying to break news, so we're not trying to be first, but there are windows of getting stuff done. So like, we talked to Jurickson Profar in spring training. This guy's played in the big leagues for 13 years, signs a 1-year deal to come back to San Diego, not even to be in the starting lineup. All of a sudden makes the All-Star game, and it's like, hey, we said that was gonna happen back in February, back in March. So that window from, okay, we gotta get this out either tonight or tomorrow, or it kind of loses steam. So this is kind of a 24/7 deal when you're handling the actual handle of an Instagram or a Twitter to respond to certain things as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just kind of knowing what our bank of content is, knowing we can go back and tap into that sort of thing, and be able to push out that content when it's ready. Even with Diggin Weekly now, I think we do a really good job of hitting on topical things and making sure we get that topical content out first, and making sure it's sort of keywordy around, you know, in the MLB that day, it was probably Profar, who was like maybe the #1 guy that people were searching and that sort of thing. So just making sure we're hitting those keywords and hitting those moments as soon as and as efficiently as we can is super important.
That's the beauty of having the full squad around it, right? There's a lot of minds, a lot of eyes on it. And again, as we get more siloed into what everyone's doing to help this process along, obviously Dom's eyes are on that full time now. Gallucci is able to shift off and help, you know, find the next shoot, the next guests, the next business strategy that we're trying to build around this, merchandise, because he comes from that world. How do we keep growing? And we keep putting people in positions to make sure all eyes are on deck, or everything's taken care of. And Dom is really now going to be handling a lot of that, obviously. So, you know, it comes down to engagement too, right? Like, let's talk about that a little bit, because you're going to be on there nonstop, chatting with the people. You guys are on your platforms. You're super active on X. You're killing them out there. What do you call it? What do you,
Putting people in body bags.
Yeah, I have a job, so I have to do other things.
This guy, yeah.
What a loser.
But the engagement's huge too. Let's just talk a little bit about that, and then we'll bring Gallucci back on to talk about the value you can bring to a podcast on the back end. But engagement's huge.
Yeah, engagement's definitely big, and I think Haas, you do a great job already on X of just kind of playing off of. I've been getting active on there a little bit with some current stuff. We obviously had Pete with his first banana ball strikeout, so we got that clip up, and we're just like trying to tee things up that you guys can interact with as well, and that kind of goes into more of like, I guess, the collaboration side of like, is it something a question about mindset that's perfect for Sua to collab on? Is it something about the Royals with Bobby Witt that's perfect for you? Are you gonna go strike out a bunch of guys in banana ball and you want to preview that? So just trying to think about it from that realm too of collaboration, and just making sure we're getting you guys involved and engaged on social too, bringing in those audiences and really starting a conversation.
And that's what's so cool also is, it's like, all right, we want to do a podcast. We're going to bring Sua, Pete, me, and we're going to talk baseball. I can talk whatever kind of baseball you want. What's going on in the big leagues, there's so many different ways you can talk about baseball, all the way down to the amateur level, all the way up to the big leagues. But what everyone behind the scenes that is now on camera for this episode, you guys do such a good job of digging in, understanding what the audience wants to know. So to be able to pinpoint that, and now we're catering to our audience and what they want to know, is my opinion how we're going to continue to grow. And I think that's you know, a big role that all you guys play behind the scenes that makes this continue to go the way it does.
Constant adjustments, man. Keep doing it. Dom, appreciate you, bud. Love having you on the team, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dom. Appreciate it, bud.
So there's one really big piece of this puzzle when you're doing a podcast of this magnitude. Again, we've talked about how many times where there's so many levels of this, and you can go out there and try to do it very simply, and you can very much make money doing that. And we're doing it at a very high level that costs a lot of money, but we're invested in that, and we want to build something great. And there's a back end to that, to trying to make this thing profitable. That is very important, or this show won't keep going. We can't keep spending without making money. So we've now put a sponsorship team in place. So we call them the Rev Squad. We got the Rev Squad out there grinding, trying to find us deals and being able to put brands' names on our show and represent them. And I think Mike's going to speak to all those values that we think we can bring. But there's a whole process in that of the inbounding and outbounding and the offers and negotiations and like custom content and all these different things that we're going to be offered or be offering. But to get there, obviously you need to have a good show. You have to have good content, good guests, good values. And I think that's what he's going to speak to the most, which I think we're most proud of.
Yeah, what's really cool about the podcast landscape is it offers a really unparalleled amount of engagement for the viewer. So you're sitting down, you're listening to stories, and it also allows us to align with brands that you guys like and potentially our viewers like. And that brand sponsorship partnership allows all of this stuff to keep going. So I know a lot of the audience out there loves the stories that we're bringing, the names that we're bringing on. These guys have done a great job, Telly and Haas, putting together the investment to make all this happen. This is not a cheap endeavor, but to keep this thing going and to tell these stories, we're really looking for brands that are going to align with our mission, our values, and we're already almost 20 something episodes into it. Hopefully some people have seen it. There's been some chatter around it, but we do have a team that's going to be doing some outreach. We've had some great inbounds already. In particular, some of the brands that I think are interesting for this are some of the mental health brands, the companies that are doing like therapy, things like that, because in general we sit around not only talking about baseball but human emotion and what drives champions, what drives people in the business world, in the comedic world. So we're at that phase where we are welcoming with open arms partnerships.
Yeah, we've one I saw on Cam's podcast was Better Health. We've had a little communication with them, which I think is a really cool fit for the mindfulness and that perspective that you bring. We're going to have some really cool opportunities, I think, with what we're building, but that value that we speak about this with our Rev Squad. And there can be very transactional deals. There can be a deal where they just say, hey, we need a post and we want Diggin Deep's name on it, or we want Moylan's name on it, or whoever's name on it, and we want to present that with our brand, and they just need that to be done for that moment, for a new sandwich they have coming out, let's say. But another example would be with a brand like State Farm or MasterCard, or someone who doesn't really need brand building. They need more, they just want to put their name on something that has value, that can keep pushing their message, right? And I think that's where we're going to come into play a lot, is like we're looking for those type of partnerships that we can put our message behind, and that supports what they bring to the table for their customers. And again, this is just for knowledge for the general person out there, whoever's trying to create a podcast, is like, what are you bringing to the table? What values are you bringing beyond just an impression? Because obviously they'll pay for impressions. They certainly will. That's pretty much what we work off of when they offer money. It's like, how many impressions can you get us? What audience you're reaching? But I think the amount of engagement is extremely important. That message that you can push through. There's obviously the entertaining value part. The audiences that your guests bring are important. So there's so many things to think about when trying to monetize a podcast, and it goes beyond that. Like on YouTube, if you do well, you can make some money on AdSense, and Google AdSense those dollars can support the podcast, the production. They can support the production. I don't think you're going to necessarily make a killing on there unless you're Mr. Beast. So it's definitely possible. But he's getting a lot of brand deals too that are paying to have him talk about their brands or use their brands. There's merchandise which we're creating. There'll be more like events that we do. We'll go places and bring the show there, and somebody could easily sponsor that. So there's so many ways. Once you create audience and engagement and retention, that's what makes you successful as a podcast. When you need to grow and hold on to that audience and make sure they want to come back, keep presenting good content. That's what make you successful.
Make sure you stay tuned, because I'm going to eat a Tide Pod next time. So.
I can't wait. One of the cool things that I really enjoyed, and now being able to talk to some of these brands, some of these big time companies, whatever they are, is a lot of their vision aligns with what we align with. And we have fans, whether it's Kansas City, San Diego, wherever it is, and we want to give them a deeper look into certain stories, into certain moments and stuff that they saw on the TV, and now they get to relive it and go behind the scenes and see what people were thinking or what was going through their mind. And what I found so cool was a lot of these big time brands, they don't want us to push product to sell. They want to give their customer more than the average, whatever that is. So that to me was something really cool, is these big brands are trying to make it better for their customer, not so much us to push a product or sell something. They just want to make the experience, the overall experience, that much better for their customer. To me, that was something really, really cool. I've never really heard anything like that before.
That's a great point. How much do you appreciate a brand who does that? A brand who's bringing you stories like this? Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, one of the ones we used to always look at was Stellar, Estrella Damm. Estrella Damm is a Spanish beer company. I think it's in Spain, and they would actually create short films. And yeah, their product would actually make them into the short films at some point, but it'd be like because the family was coming together and celebrating and they happened to be drinking it.
Right.
But there was a full story around it. And it was like, I actually enjoyed watching these short films. I didn't care who was making it, but then I learned they were making it. It's like, now, like, I want to drink your beer.
I did
want
order
to drink your
Estrella
beer.
Damms because
Like,
especially
yeah.
you go to Spain, you're like,
And
I'm
it
gonna drink some
works, man.
Estrella
It's
Damm.
like, just bring me something that I can enjoy, whether it's entertaining, emotional, funny, doesn't matter, like whatever works for your brand, and I hope we can bring that to the world.
Call
too.
that non-interruptive advertising. You're not interrupting somebody's day, you're just kind of enhancing it.
Chief of staff telling you how it gets done.
Love it, baby.
Love it, man.
Another point that's cool is when either brands or things that we use naturally come up. You guys talked about Notion. If you were to see these guys' Notion setup, it is very impressive. So Michael Diggin Deep at moonballmedia.com, Notion, we'd love to talk, but it literally supports a lot of the workflow here. And there's many other tools that we use that people who are developing podcasts or businesses in general need to use. And I think you're seeing it play out right here. So
Yeah, Zoom, email address, Google Docs. Check my email. Was that me?
it's like Billy Madison. The social studies, Matt. This is hard. Yeah.
Perfect, guys. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was long, but
Thanks, fellas. Great
that
job.
was awesome, guys. Thank you.
Hey, good luck on the back end, guys.
Yes.
Fucking hell.